The left is freaking out about the pardon for Derek Chauvin.
This morning on CNN, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison reacted to the possibility of a pardon for Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd. Now, the idea has picked up momentum after Elon Musk tweeted on X that a Chauvin pardon is, quote, something to think about. Here is what Ellison said this morning.
I think that it is sadly another example of blatant disrespect for the law, blatant disrespect for George Floyd and his family and people who remember those very, very ugly days. I hope that Donald Trump has enough humanity to recognize that releasing Derek Chauvin would cause untold injury to George Floyd's family and the many, many people who feel vulnerable because they share experiences like the one George Floyd experienced. It would set us back as a society. We took great steps forward. There's 18,000 police departments across the United States. After the murder of George Floyd, many of them had a reflective moment and did a lot of things to try to improve police community relationships. And police departments depend on trust, and Derek Chauvin destroyed that trust. And they've been trying to rebuild it. So it is actually really hurting law enforcement, because what you're saying is good conduct, bad conduct, it doesn't matter. You get to murder people if you want to. And so for every chief and every police officer out there striving to make a better department with a better relationship with their community, it is a spit in the face to them too.
Okay, so this is Keith Ellison, who is the AG from Minnesota. And what he is talking about is the George Floyd pardon that basically just got brought up by Shapiro on his podcast. And what he was saying was, if Donald Trump were to pardon Derek Chauvin, that it would be like a spit in the face of the justice system. So we know there has been a mass decline in the hiring of police officers because nobody really wants to be a police officer, since police officers basically can get prosecuted at every turn. And pretty much anything they do wrong, they can get prosecuted. And what he was saying in this clip, the AG Ellison of Minnesota, was basically that if Donald Trump were to enact this pardon for Derek Chauvin, it would be like a spit in the face of the justice system. So I think he's wrong. I think this basically sends a message to police officers that, the federal government has your back, so to speak, because we know, obviously, situations like this, cases like this, George Floyd, and there was many other examples. I don't think this will be a spit in the face to the justice system like he's kind of portraying it to be. I think it would, if anything, it would be sort of a message from the federal government to police officers that the federal government is, has your back, so to speak. And this would encourage more people to become police officers, more people who actually want to be police officers and not are just, looking for a job, looking for a paycheck. Because we know over the past few years, the anti-police sentiment that's been ramping up across the country the past couple of years, the defund the police movement. And then you have people that don't want to be cops anymore. And you have the decline in applications for people that want to be police officers. Like, that is all a result of things like this. It seems like police officers are kind of scared to do their job. You have response times going up, more crimes happening. Police officers don't want to be police officers anymore. Now, in this next clip, it's CNN Night News with Abby Phillips. And if you listen to what the lefties are saying on the panel, Scott Jennings isn't in this one. But basically, if you listen to what they're saying, it sounds like they're saying that if Trump pardons Derek Chauvin, that they will protest and they will riot. That's essentially what they're saying in this. Now watch this.
I'm tired of having fake conversations, so we just have to say this is gaslighting, right? So this guy was convicted by a jury in a state court. So no matter what Donald Trump decides to do, if he issues this federal pardon, he's going to sit in jail. So what's the purpose of it? Why would you go down this line, reopen this wound when it's not going to have any impact whatsoever?
I don't think they know. I mean, you're 100%. What he says is absolutely correct. It's a silly conversation. So the trial we all watched on TV was the state court trial. Right. The way Donald Trump does not, or any president, doesn't have the power to pardon anyone in the state court. Like, he can't pardon himself, and only the governor of the state can do that. It's the same thing here. So hypothetically, if Trump did pardon him, what happened was after he gets convicted, he then goes into federal court on civil rights violation and he pleads guilty to 20 years. So, but it runs concurrently at the same time. So if Trump pardons
He's serving
him,
the same sentence.
He's still standing.
And what he's doing is, so in the state court case, he was found guilty by a jury.
Correct.
In federal court, he pled guilty. So he acknowledged and accepted responsibility. So you're going to pardon him despite the fact that he accepted responsibility for something, obviously saying he did it because you have to tell a judge and confirm that you're accepting this plea for a reason, and there's not going to be any impact whatsoever. So other than to gaslight, other than to reopen these wounds, what's the purpose? Why are we having this conversation? Why is Elon Musk joining in and kind of making this a bigger issue?
I'll tell you why. I mean, quite honestly, because we've gotten to a point where I think they want to incite violence. They want to incite protests so that they have an excuse to invoke what Donald Trump wanted to invoke last time, but was not allowed to do by some members of his cabinet, which is to invoke the Insurrection Act and take more power. And I'm sorry, I know that sounds cuckoo, for Cocoa Puffs, except that we know he tried to do that last time and was stopped by people in his own cabinet. And so this is to create dissension. This is to create animosity. This is to create protests in the streets so that he can go out there and put a stop to it and basically do what he was not allowed to do last time. And take even more power.
I think we can't.
Now, this is totally a conspiracy theory, just flat out. If he wanted to actually do that, I mean, he could do it now. They've been protesting since he's been president for the past 2 months. Have they not? They're just blatantly saying it on CNN. This is basically like, if anything, it's a message to the current administration that if you do this, we are going to be big mad. We're going to be big mad.
Avoid the racial message.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
That is the being sent, the dog whistle. And I think it's a lot about dividing people, otherizing people. And just having this conversation is about that, the way that they're treating Latino immigrants. It's about that. It's about making certain white people feel better, more powerful than Black people, Latino people, immigrants, you name it. But,
it is
find
that.
I almost feel like I'm stooping to her level when I'm trying to entertain what she's saying right now. But she is from The View. So I do not expect her to have a higher IQ answer. That is such a low IQ answer. That is unbelievable. It is clear that the verdict of this case was made to please the mob. It is very clear. My personal opinion, I think he should be pardoned on federal charges. Now, state charges, that's up to the state. But from what I've seen, I cannot say beyond, I don't know what the Justice Department in Minnesota, I don't know how they define beyond reasonable doubt, but from what I've seen, it does not look beyond reasonable doubt that he murdered George Floyd. And she's talking about the racial divide, like this is making the racial divide worse. Like, no, this case is all about race. They made it about race. This happened in 2020. This was partially the cause of a lot of the riots. $2 billion of damage. Like, come on.
The group that you can define as
quickly, I spoke with the brother of George Floyd, Philonise Floyd, who was there on the ground for a very long time. And I just wanted to read a statement. In talking to him, I covered this from the very beginning to the very end, stayed in Minneapolis for about a year and followed the trial and followed the case and was there during the protests. So here's what George Floyd's brother said to me. He said, if the president were to do this, it would hurt us. It is so personal. We saw our brother tortured to death. My niece would have to see him walk freely while her dad is in the ground. If he does this, it will set America back 400 years. The ones pushing for this are trying to remove any power that Black Americans have to get justice. It is disgusting. Why would you do this? Why would you re-injure this family and America? So why is Musk pushing this idea?
I think the good news here is, from my understanding, no one at the White House is entertaining this. There isn't any political advantages strategically for the president to even consider such a thing. Sometimes stuff on social media.
Elon Musk is in the White House.
Well, sometimes I think what you see on social media, Sarah, if I'm just being frank, probably should be ignored. I just got to be honest. I think this guy has had his attorneys attempt to appeal, from my understanding.
Yes.
And at every level, they have failed. The justice system appears to have worked the way it was intended to work. I think the White House is right to ignore this, to keep focusing on other things. If Musk wants to put this out here, he owns Twitter. He can do whatever the hell he wants. But from my perspective as a strategist, the White House needs to just ignore this.
But
Nothing good
Musk
comes
is
from this.
part of the White House, and Musk is retweeting this to 319 million people. So he's putting it out there, and when Musk says things, Donald Trump listens. So what do you do about it?
I don't think the president's going to listen to this.
And should we ignore it? Because we're put in a position where do we ignore this issue of gaslighting, of trying to incite things, and just act like it's not going to happen because there won't be nothing will come of it because he'll still be in jail? Or do we focus on it and try and make it an issue? So now you're putting us in a position to have to decide, do we want to address this or
not? But hold
not?
on, let's look at where it's coming from. This isn't coming from someone at the Department of Justice. This is coming from an entertainer. That's what he is, Benjamin.
No, it's coming from
He's an entertainer. And look, it worked. It worked.
Yeah.
It's a topic tonight on this #1 rated show on CNN.
Because the head of Doge,
Someone who spoke at the cabinet meeting, someone who was there yesterday.
We are all driving people to go watch Ben Shapiro right now. We're all driving people. What did he say? What's going on?
Arthur,
It worked.
with all due respect, he puts these kinds of people in positions of influence. Dan Bongino is now the #2 guy.
That's your buddy.
No, not my buddy. Believe me, not my buddy. At the FBI, right? Pete Hegseth is running the DOD. I mean, these are all people who you could have said 6 months ago were the same jokers whose job was to go on TV or go on their podcasts and get ratings, and now they're in positions of influence.
Dan Bongino is also a Secret Service agent.
He's dismantled the civil rights.
Yeah, Bongino had some.
He's dismantled the civil rights
security.
department at the DOJ, the departments that would be in charge of investigating cases like this at a federal level have ceased to exist, basically.
And we can't ignore that the person who is now talking about DEI being a problem, dismantling things at the Department of Justice and everything else, is talking about Derek Chauvin needs to be pardoned. Those things don't happen in a vacuum. They're all coming together for a reason, and we can't ignore it.
Until the Justice Department, until the White House, or Caroline Leavitt, the president's press secretary, says the president is considering this, I think this is a nothing burger. I think we can move on. Elon Musk tweets a lot of things. Do we debate that President Trump is now considering every single tweet that Elon Musk puts out on X every single day? Absolutely not. I think we should put that in that category and keep it moving.
And not speak up and say, hey, guys, this shouldn't happen. We don't have the right, or we shouldn't do that.
The White House isn't considering this. The Justice Department isn't considering this. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think anybody...
And you think it's a bad idea?
Okay, of course I think it's a bad idea.
Let me
I think
throw
most people would
something
think
out
it's a
here.
bad idea.
So Cher Michael Singleton, the Republican on this panel, doesn't think that it's going to be entertained, but I kind of disagree. It is kind of early to call it, but from what he's seeing, he doesn't think it's going to be entertained. But my personal opinion, I do think that, if people make enough noise about this, it will definitely come to fruition. Now, like I said earlier, my personal opinion of this, I think he should be pardoned because from what I've seen, it doesn't look like they've proved beyond reasonable doubt that he definitely for sure murdered George Floyd. Being that he had all the drugs in his system, he had prior health conditions. There's a combination of things, I think, that just created a recipe for him to die. And he didn't even die at the scene. He died at the hospital. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and I'll see you later. Peace.